So, how did I go from a 15-year-old with no money to sourcing over £10 million worth of property by the age of 22? This is my story. So for those who don't know me, my name is Denzel Jones, and I'm the founder of DJ Property Solutions, which is a luxury property sourcing company sourcing prime property for high-net individuals. Now, things haven't always been this way. Back about 7 years ago, I was a 15-year-old who didn't really know what I wanted to do in life. I had different options available, but I didn't have the right path for me to go down. And that's why I decided to dabble into property. Now, a lot of people ask me why I chose property, and I feel like property is an industry that's never ending. Whether you're a doctor, whether you're a footballer, your end goal is always property because it's one of the safest assets in the world. Now, especially in England, when there's an increasing population and not as much demand, I said to myself, instead of waiting 20 to 30 years to get into property, why not start now? And that's why I did it. So in today's video, I want to outline a bit about my journey, some mistakes I made, and some key tips for you if you want to become a property entrepreneur this year. So I grew up in a single parent household, and this led to a lot of financial struggles, which made me have a big drive to do something to make a change for my family. Now, like most of you, I started drop shipping and it didn't work. I did SMMA and it didn't work. In fact, initially I wanted to also become a footballer, but again, it didn't work. It wasn't until one day I came across some accounts, as my mum was a bookkeeper, and this happened to be the person who would mentor me and start my property journey. Now, this guy was called Douglas, and he was a very successful property millionaire, and he was someone who I felt that I could learn a lot from. Now, being the proactive person I was, I reached out to him and said, look, I haven't got much to offer you now. If I can go to your office and help you with the tea, the coffee in your meetings, can you help me learn about my property journey? Now, fast forward, around 16 years old, my journey started. And so when I turned 16, he started taking me to property networking events. And this was incredible as it allowed me to expand my network and also to understand what's actually possible if you put your mind to it. Now, fast forward a year or two, I started bringing him deals and he was paying me a fee for co-sourcing with him. And at the time, it wasn't even called co-sourcing. I was just utilizing what I learned to find property deals and also find people who need property deals and passing it to him and doing deals together. I started enjoying this and realizing that this is a very lucrative industry. But this was also the time where university was approaching. So I did decide to take the leap and start university whilst doing my sourcing business, which I registered. Now again, when I did it by myself, it was a lot more difficult than dealing with my mentor. In fact, for my first deal, it took me almost 6 months. So the biggest lesson I learned from that is the power of the follow-up. Now there's this one client that I was trying to source a lot of properties for. But again, they wasn't really taking me serious because I was young. So I decided to take it into my own hands and find them the perfect deal, which was a 1-bedroom apartment in Milton Keynes. This ended up being the first deal that I sourced, which then led me to source tens of millions worth of property. Now, sourcing this deal made me realize the true potential with property sourcing. And despite this, I still decided to start university. Like most of you, again, to make the family happy, I thought that university was a path where I could, one, get a good degree, but at the same time expand my network. And I did just that. 4 to 5 months when starting my university journey, I was able to secure my first rent-to-rent deal. Now, a lot of you are probably thinking, how would you have the money to secure your first rent-to-rent deal? But I was proactive. I reached out to someone who I knew had the capital or didn't have the time, but I had the knowledge and the time, and we joint ventured for my first apartment. Now, I studied in Nottingham and my first property was a rent-to-SA deal in Nottingham. Now, this was a really good concept as this made me again realize that with sourcing, it's more active income, but with property rent-to-rent, it's more of a passive income. However, this was ruined by COVID, which made me realize that although these strategies are good, they're not as recession-proof as something like sourcing. So despite the rent-to-rents going well, I decided to focus on property sourcing as I believed that was what would get me to true financial freedom. So throughout uni, I focused on building my personal brand. And this is because I know that people buy from people. And as property is a people's game, doing this was very, very key, not only short term, but in the long run, which I'm seeing the benefits from till today. Now, I also decided to get another mentor, as I believe my first mentor was really good in expanding my mindset and getting me started, but my second mentor ended up giving me a strategy which I was able to scale to a good revenue, the way I didn't have to work anymore. So throughout my uni, I was also building my business. I was getting clients, sourcing deals, and learning a lot about how the property industry works. I think one of the biggest lessons that I learned was the power of your network. You're literally one person away from your life changing. And in uni, I was able to meet builders, contractors, lawyers, and also started sourcing clients internationally, which again expanded my mind as to the potential of property sourcing. Now, one thing I want to mention is a lot of people, when they're starting university or working a job, they don't understand what they can actually achieve, and that's because it's a limiting belief. A lot of people used to say to me, Denzel, how are you balancing uni with your personal life and also with your business? But I would say it's all about what you want and your reason why. I think because my reason was so strong to make a change for my family, I decided I have to put everything at risk to make this work. And also it's about delayed gratification. Now, a lot of people in uni were buying cars, buying the most expensive clothes, and I wasn't doing any of that. I had one pair of shoes that I was wearing throughout most of my uni. That's because I didn't care. I knew that when I leave uni, I'll be able to work for myself, enough to rely on the income, and then be able to buy whatever I want. And that's what happened just by sticking to the process. So if you're like a same predicament and you're not sure what to do, I say stick to something for as long as possible with the right intensity, build your brand around it, build your network around it, and trust me, give it a couple of years and you'll start to see the rewards. Now, if you're in property or in business in general, as I mentioned, networking is so crucial. Now, so here are a couple of ways which I expanded my network, which you guys can as well. Number one was networking events. And this actually led me to create my own networking platform called the Gen Z Club, where I was bringing together a lot of like-minded entrepreneurs to expand their network. So you guys can literally find any networking events in your local city where you can expand your network, whether it's in your field or outside of it. It's very key. Number two is social media. I didn't realize that most of my friends who I have today in the business space were literally from an Instagram message, us networking and showing each other value. And that's because you never know that one relationship, it might not benefit you right now, but in the future, it can become very beneficial. So again, being young, you always have that dilemma, should I go out a lot or should I focus on business? And that's why I think it's very important to have different friends for different reasons. I know that I have friends that I can work out with, I know that I have friends that I can network with and do business with, I know that I have friends that I can enjoy with. And that was very crucial in me expanding my journey. Now, there was a phase of my life where I was literally so focused where I hardly saw my friends. And that's because I genuinely believe for you to achieve something significant in life, you need to have that period of pure monk mode where you're working hard on your goals, avoiding distractions, and that's when you'll see the progress that you deserve. So when finishing uni, I had the decision, should I secure a good grad job, which again, I got on local first of all, or should I take the risk and take my property journey full time? I did just that. Now, although this wasn't easy at the start because you didn't have a guaranteed income, it taught me to build the business in a way where it's actually working for you and you're not working for the business. So I started off by building an amazing client pipeline. So for example, one of the main things I focused on was building my investors list. And that's why till today, I've got over 5,000 high quality investors on my list. But the second thing, it was also finding a way to get deals automated. I knew that if I could find a way to get regular deals coming in, I'll be able to fulfill the needs of my investors, and I did just that. And lastly, it's the systems. I said to myself, I want to focus on sourcing properties and doing what I'm best, which is negotiating with investors and leaving the rest to the systems. And that way you can do a lot more with the business. Now, another important lesson that I learned, and this is what allowed me to hit the 10 million figure in property source deals, was attacking the high net worth individual market. Because typically in property sourcing, you can charge around £3,000 for a property deal sourced. But I said to myself, if I can now source a higher end deal, for example, £1 million, and charge 2% sourcing fee, a lot more money can be generated. So I did just that. I started building my network with clients in Switzerland, Monaco, Dubai, Hong Kong, and all these lucrative countries. And that's where I was able to target high net worth individuals. Now I'll be going over in future videos how I've done this and how you can as well. But this is just to show you the context of how my mind was thinking to achieve the goal that I desired. I had to start rebranding myself as someone, as a go-to person for footballers, athletes, and just high net worth individuals in general to source these types of deals. So my first deal that I sourced was valued at over £1 million, and it was a block of apartments. And again, the sourcing fee that I gained from that made me realize that this is the path that I want to go to reach my property and financial goals. Now, since finishing university, I've sourced multiple deals like this, and I've actually been able to expand my team to 5 people who are all working towards building the DJ Property Solutions brand. Not only this, I've also been able to build my portfolio of properties, which again is continuing to expand in, and a lot more good things are coming along the way. Now, so just to recap for you all, I started off single parent household, no money to start with, and I was able to achieve this in the space of a few years' time. And it's something that you can do too. I think my biggest lessons are, number one, have a clear goal. What is it that you want to achieve and work backwards to do it? Number two, focus. There's no point starting property today, then doing trading tomorrow and dropshipping the next day. Have that pure focus on that one thing and dedicate yourself to it and to the progression. And lastly is to expand your network. Be known as the go-to person for whatever you're doing. Expand your network, build your knowledge, and you'll see the fruits of your labor pay off. So now the reason I started YouTube is because I feel like I could give a lot of value to those who are in a similar position, whether it's in property or entrepreneurship in general, whether it's on the mindset, whether it's networking tips or general strategy. So if you guys want to see more content, please like, comment and subscribe. And I'm looking forward to delivering more value to you guys on this platform.